mentor, where I like to teach personal finance through the lens of my own experience and through ASMR. I hope you've had a good day. I hope you are relaxing. Perhaps at the end of a long day. And maybe you're here for the triggers, the whispers, and maybe you're here to learn about personal finance, again, through the lens of my own experience. I've been sharing my thoughts about all of the years that I was learning about personal finance from right around 2004, 2005. Now suddenly we're up to episode 25, where we're in 2011 now. And I'm thinking back over all of these years to be able to share with you again how I felt, what I was doing, what my focus was, because I think it's important for people to see and hear experiences through people. It's so uncommon for people to even want to talk about what they've done, either good or bad, with money. And so I thought having a YouTube channel where I talk through ASMR type style would be very relaxing for people, because, I mean, let's face it, most people we know can't even afford a $1,000 emergency. I remember years ago it was like $600 that people could not afford for an emergency, and now I guess with inflation they bumped that up to $1,000. In 2011, as I shared with you in episode number 24, it really was a new beginning of an era in personal finance. And that era was titled Financial Independence. There were so many articles written about personal finance and financial independence and freedom. It so resonated with me in such a large way that, as I shared with you last time, that became my mantra. That became the why I was saving and investing. And it started to click with me that if I could build an engine of assets, that those assets in and of themselves potentially could pay an income, and all the while keep the original asset. Let me break that down for you just for a moment, because it really resonated with me. My goal was to get to $1 million, because I heard that you could take 4% off of that money pretty much every year, like $40,000. was huge, because if you need 40, but Social Security pays you 20, then really I would only be taking 2% off of the million, or $20,000 per year, because Social Security may pay me $20,000 per year. Does that make sense? What I just said right there is very important, a concept that I want all of you to understand. Not only did I say last week that we need to keep our expenses really low for the what-ifs of life, but the fact that $1 million can generate the $40,000 per year, and you can still keep the $1 million, is what I want you to understand. But here's the reality. As you get older, into your 80s and 90s, do you always have to preserve the principal? No. But it's interesting to think in terms of this way. This is how I like to think of it. You know how they say the market can return maybe, let's just say 7%. Well, if you have $1 million, and at the end of the year, the S&P 500, or let's say perhaps your portfolio, generated 7%, which mine has done many times, then you just made $70,000 in unrealized gains. Make sense? Now you have $1,070,000. And if you needed the money and you were not working and you entered retirement, then you take off $40,000, which means now you have $1,030,000. Not only did you keep the principal of the million, but you just made $30,000 to add to the million. Now, those are very rough numbers, right? But it's the way in which I started thinking in 2011. The other thing I wanted to talk about in this episode in 2011, and the title, I believe, of this episode is that I also, in 2011, had a small inheritance. And I know many of you may be thinking, oh my goodness, how did he get to like 1.5 million in about 15 to 18 years? Did he have an inheritance? Did somebody give him the money? And that is so far from the truth. And in fact, for most millionaires that live next door to you, they also have not had major inheritances. But my grandfather, my mom's stepfather, so he wasn't even really my real grandfather, he was a product of the Great Depression. He never made a lot of money in his lifetime, but he saved his money at that time in CDs, certificate of deposits, and really did very well over the years. And upon his death, he had about $200,000, which got divided amongst his children and his grandchildren. So I got a check for $22,000 in 2011. Now, many people might take a windfall of money, and I think I've talked about this on my channel before, but many people would just welcome that kind of a windfall and just go spend it on something, right? They might take a vacation, they might do really frivolous things with the money in many cases. in a windfall that I did not anticipate or expect. What is the best use of this money, like right now? For example, in 2011, if I had credit card debt, which I did not, because you guys know all of that credit card debt that I had, like $50,000, got wiped away in 1995 when I claimed bankruptcy. In 2011, I had no credit card debt whatsoever. I still had mortgage debt, and next week we'll be talking about 2012 and what I chose to do in 2012 relative to my mortgage debt. So I'll save that for next week. But in 2011, I determined that I needed a new car. At the time, I had a 1999 Mazda Miata that I bought in 2001. So it was getting up there in age and miles. But I decided to take the $22,000 and put it in a money market account. Now, I don't remember what money market accounts were paying back in 2011, but I'm sure it wasn't very much. I kept that money safe and sound, basically, is what I did. And I was pretty proud of myself. I thought I honored my grandfather's money in a good way. I didn't want to make an emotional purchase like a lot of people do. Again, they may go purchase something just, frivolously. And so I also knew I really did not need a car yet. But it was on my radar. So a lot of times in personal finance, what I would do every year is say to myself, Evan, what's on your radar? What are things in the next 1 to 2 years would you maybe need money to pay for? So that's good financial forecasting. It's being honest with yourself and saying, you know what, I'm going to need this larger purchase. And for most of us, it's a car. So I thought, rather than buying a car in a few years and having a payment, which I did not want to do, I decided to put that $22,000 in a money market account. Now, I did not buy the car until 2014. So I held it in that money market for 3 years. And all the while, I had it earmarked for the car. So these are terms you can say to yourself as you learn more about personal finance. You want to forecast into the future. You want to say what's on my radar. And if you have a windfall of money, or let's say you've got money in your budget that you don't want to save, you can put it in a separate little area, either in an online savings account and somewhere on a spreadsheet. Then you can document it and say, this money that I put over here is earmarked for this purchase over here. Now, I didn't know that it would be 3 years. I didn't have to know. But I knew that I kept the money safe. I didn't want to put it in the stock market. So you can use this strategy with not only a windfall of money, but just any extra money you have. If you're saving for a big purchase, if you're saving for a home or saving for a car, you can put it in short-term reserves. We'll talk about what short-term reserves are, things like CDs, money markets, online savings accounts, which, by the way, right now as I'm recording this in 2024, crazy. CDs are paying like 5%, so once I get to the point where I show you what money I have and where it's located, I'll share with you that I have a CD, like 50,000 I think it is, in one CD for short-term reserves that I'm earmarking for subsidizing my living expenses if I retire early and if the market goes down. As you get closer to retirement, you start to build up some cash reserves. I know I'm getting ahead of myself, aren't I? But you can build cash reserves, because if the market is down, I don't want to sell the shares that made that million in my example from a little while ago, right? Market goes down, I don't want to take 4% off of 800,000. I want to take 4% off of a million, right? So in those years, it might be a good idea, perhaps, to then fund FUND my life with cash. And then in good times, when the market goes up, you take that cash off the table and you put it into those buckets for living expenses if the market then goes down during bear markets, etc. So I knew I was building this cash not only for retirement, what I just talked about, but in 2011 I put the $22,000 in that account, and I just waited. I waited until I needed the car, and so I ended up buying the 2013 Mazda 3, but I bought it in 2014. Nobody wanted it because it was a stick shift, a standard, right? And it did not have power locks either. Crazy. It had power windows, but not power locks. Anyway, I bought it for $15,300. I just wrote a check. It felt so good to do that. I wrote a check for $15,300, which means I had $6,700 left of my grandfather's inheritance, which I still have to this day in my short-term reserves in a CD. It's locked up in a CD right now. So as I think about wrapping up this episode, number 25, in the pursuit of financial independence in 2011, these are the things that I was thinking about. And so I would like to leave you with a thought process of, if during your journey, if you do get a small inheritance, and you may, a lot of people do, then think about what you need that money for in the budget that you're creating for that year. It might be better suited over here, or it might be better suited over here. And because you have been a steward of your own money, and because you've been watching your money throughout these many years, you're going to make the right decision as to what you should do with that money. So that's what I have for you guys today. Come back on Friday for episode 26. I have some interesting things to share with you on Friday. The episode, I believe, is going to be titled $1 Million to Spend. And I titled it that because I'm going to be sharing with you an article that I wrote in 1976 when I was 10 years old. I just discovered that I had this back when my mother gave me a big box of things that I'll share with you on Friday. It's really interesting to look at a child's perspective of what $1 million is, and I'll compare that to how I feel about it today. So thank you so much for joining me, guys. Hit that like button if you like content like this. Subscribe to my channel as well, and I'll see you next time right here